Welcome to the Athletes in Motion podcast, from race to recovery, with your hosts, Tom Riegel and Kenny Bailey.
Hey, Kenny, how are you?
I'm fantastic, Tom. How are you?
I'm fantastic as well. We're welcoming Sara Milam back onto the show. She was with us last year. She is our licensed mental health therapist who has the owner and founder of Steadfast Living Therapy. And we're glad to have you back on, Sara. Always fun to talk with you. So
thanks for having me.
This is going to be fun. We've got a good conversation coming up about triathlon and its perceptions in society. We'll say in society is a bigger thing. So before we get into that, I want to thank everybody for all your notes and comments and things. Keep up the 5 stars, thumbs up, all of that helps the algorithm, helps this get out to a wider range of people. We're all global. We're across. We've got listeners in a lot of cool spots in the world, which we thank everybody for checking in and listening to us. Get all of that, and make sure to subscribe audio. You can see our wonderful faces on YouTube, on our YouTube channel as well, if you're just listening on that. Yeah, so welcome to the show. So this all came about, Sara reached out to me a few weeks ago, I guess now, and it was about an article that was written in Triathlete magazine that was questioning whether triathlon had an elitism problem, of their perception of being for only elite people and being up there. And so Sara pinged me about it because this seemed like, a couple of questions and things that she had off of this. So Sara, talk through what you were originally thinking when we popped this up, because I had read the article and you brought it to my attention. I went back into it again, read it a little bit more in depth. It was good stuff. It was actually a very good article.
Yeah. So, I thought the article was really interesting because I've noticed when I go to participate in races, I often feel intimidated, particularly the day when I'm going to rack my bike and, get my packet and
Sure.
Everybody's there with their, fancy bikes, fancy equipment. And I thought it was just a me problem until I read this article and I was like, maybe other people also feel kind of intimidated when they are in that race environment. And then, of course, being a mental health therapist, I think about it from, the mental health and mental performance side of things as well. And so I wanted to reach out and see if you had any of your athletes that you coach ever talk about feeling nervous or feeling intimidated just by that race environment and by the kind of perceived elitism that's there.
Yeah. And of course, my response was, heck yeah, we talk about it all the time. And that's the biggest thing. And I'm going to take a quick look over at this. It's a couple of things that they bring up about the fact of the perception and versus our reality, right? Like, it looks like it's a sport for a certain body type. It looks like it's a sport for people who spend a lot of money, which all of these things are not true, right? Once you get beyond it and you go to a race, you start to see the different body types. You start to see people on different types of equipment and things that are there. But there is a group that spends a lot of money and needs to look good, and it's totally intimidating for everybody else, especially when you get to the race, especially newbies who are getting into the sport. I get so many people that come in for bike fits and they're getting into triathlon, and we're getting them a bike and they're getting set up on a tri bike, or they're a used tri bike, or we're getting them on a road bike, and they're asking me 1,000 questions about all the gear that they need to buy. The equipment is spending this and dropping all of this kind of money, and all of a sudden they're up $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 on equipment, and you're just like, no, you don't need to do that type of thing. Kenny, what was your experience with when you were first starting out in it, or even now, like when you're going into transition as a new athlete, right? You've done all this work to get there. You don't know much about the sport. Besides that, you've been training and you're kind of going through it and you're talking with people and you're reading the articles. Now you show up and you walk into transition area on race day. What were your memories of, like, oh my God, like, or what did you feel?
Yeah, it's one of the few sports, if you think of elitist sports, it's one of the few sports that's pretty equipment heavy. Golf is probably the other one, right? Where you buy a $600 driver or a $1,000 driver because, if you don't have that, do you have the Ping lights, or are you using, the Walmart brand? Again, your swing, nothing to do with your swing, nothing to do with your capability. And it's hard because when you go in, because it's such an equipment heavy sport, it requires a wetsuit. It requires a bicycle. It requires running shoes. Now, it doesn't require, $235, carbon plated. So your push off can be better kind of deal. But those are the visual things that you see. And what's kind of funny, I think there's actually two sides to it. There's an elitist side to it, but there's the other part where there's sort of you're faking it, right? If you buy all that equipment and you come in and you're lousy at it, that's pretty funny too. But I think for this conversation, it is intimidating because you'll see somebody that is in fairly good shape and they're, walking with $1,000 wetsuit and their bike's got a full disc on it and it's set up and it's a $15,000 bike and, their transition area has, incredibly cool stuff. And you're wondering to yourself, do I belong here? Not from from an athletic perspective, but from a class perspective. Am I, same thing with golf, right? I'm not going to walk in with golf with again, $20 shorts and, some low end golf equipment. And you're trying to, and it's the same thing. You go to play golf. It's a $300 buy-in for some of these places to go play golf. It's an $800 buy-in for Ironman. So the buy-ins, so you scrape enough money to get into this thing. You scrape enough money together to and you still have this sense of like, okay, even your car, right? If you drive with a nice bike, but you have like a lousy car, people are like, oh, this guy. And it's just a weird sort of thing where it's not athletic pursuit. It's because it's so equipment heavy. Those are part and parcel to how people feel, right? Which is, on running, when you go to a marathon, I just need a pair of shoes. That's it, and a pair of shorts. And you're not going to look at somebody's like, if they have the high-end Mizuno shorts, who cares? You have a pair of shorts, it's a pair of shoes, go run. Right. It's about capability, less about that. But I don't know. It's been this challenge because then it looks as if that barrier, perception is reality. When you create that high barrier, then only people with that barrier then feel as if they can, despite your physical ability. And so that's always been a challenge. You go in and go, well, yeah, I got this bike. Oh, okay. I got the low end, felt bike and, can I do this? And you have to have a strong sense of self to be okay with that. And well, Sarah, you probably better to know about that, but that feels to me, and Sarah, tell me if I'm wrong, but that's a very narrow band of people that are okay with that strong sense of self. If you're feeling intimidated by your physicality or by being able to show up, and then on top of that, that's the part that's difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, go ahead, Tom.
I was going to say, what was your experience? So you've obviously felt this going into your races. So what were you experiencing?
Yeah, I think Kenny hit the nail on the head, right? It comes down to that core question, do you belong or not? We as humans, we evolved to be, hardwired for connection, right? And we need to belong in groups and be in groups in order to survive historically. And so when we feel like we don't belong, that can feel very threatening to us and feel threatening to our emotional well-being and safety. And we know logically, right? Feeling like you don't belong at a triathlon is not logically a threat to your well-being or your survival, but it feels like that, right? We get that emotional response. It was interesting because in the article, it even said that research shows that triathletes use gear purchases to compensate for feelings of inferiority.
Yep.
And to show that they belong.
Yep.
And so as far as my experience goes, Tom, I remember a couple of years ago that either when I did a bike fitting with you or I was at a race and ran into you, I can't remember, but I asked you, I was like, do I need aero bars for my bike? Because I just have a road bike. And I feel like I'm like the only one out here that just has a road bike. And you were like, no, not really. And I like my road bike. I'm comfortable on it. It works for my, purposes. And, but really the only reason why I was asking that question was I was looking around and I'm like, well, I feel like I'm in the minority here. It was more about, do I fit in and do I belong based on what I see other people have, as opposed to, do I actually need that to support my goals in triathlon and my purpose for participating? And the answer to that question was no, I really didn't.
Yeah. It's like showing up to a run club and you show up in work boots and jeans and something, but even if it's a meeting at a coffee house or a bar where you're not running, but you're going to meet the run group, right? They're going to have their run shoes on because they wear them all the time, right? This is their thing, and then they're going to have a shirt from an event or a jacket with the little Boston Marathon logo on it or something like that. And you're going to be standing there in work boots and jeans, and you're going to be like, I don't know if I really like, you don't feel that like these are my people type of moment. I totally see that on athletes going in. I love doing the sprint and Olympic races. And we can talk about the other piece of this that we're going to touch on a little bit, is that triathlon has an Ironman problem, because everyone thinks that Ironman is a triathlon and vice versa, right? So when people say, oh, did you do a triathlon? And like, oh yeah, I did. Well, I just did a sprint. It was like, no. You don't have to do an Ironman. Like, so.
Or they ask you, like, did you go to Hawaii? It's like, well, no,
yeah.
You gotta.
Yeah, it's
sorry.
like, no. It's like, so
earn my way to that
so
one.
I see these athletes in the sprint and Olympic races, and they walk into transition, and their eyes are big, right? Their heart rate, I can tell, is already up, because you're walking into 300, 400, 500,000 bikes, on those races. And you're walking in with your road bike, and you got your bag, and you don't know what transition, like you didn't practice transitions because you weren't with anybody that was showing you how to do those things. So you're kind of trying to glom information off of all of this, right? And then the dude or the girl walks by with the disc wheel and the $8,000 bike and the, the aero bars and the whole thing, and they've got the real aero wrapped helmet, and there's like going down, is like, and you're like, yeah, that's not me. Like, you can't even fathom how you get from where you are now to that. Right. And you're trying to process all that information while get into this race and think that you're probably scared of the swim, and you're going like, and now I've got to jump off a boat, or I've got to jump off a dock right into the water and swim. And you're like, how does this all process in my life? Why did I make this bad decision? To go down that road. I see it in their eyes, and I usually end up talking to people and trying to walk them through some stuff. Oh, you don't need that. You need this. Just do all of that, just over years of experience. But I mean, when I started off on it years ago, they had that, but not to the level it is now, right? We had the bikes, some disc wheels and some stuff, but it was still, I don't know, it was a little more old school. The tri-bikes were there, but they weren't as wide, they weren't as aero, they weren't like, it was just a little different, but it was still intimidating, because you'd hear the disc wheels make a certain sound with that carbon,
which by the way is a beautiful sound.
It's amazing. I love it now.
My God, it's a beautiful sound.
But you would hear them on the
as
road,
I'm getting
like,
past.
You hear
wow, that
this,
sounds lovely.
You hear this swoosh swoosh sound coming by you, and
the brief 3 seconds that I hear it.
Oh my God. Like that's you're either totally intimidated, or you're like, I want to be like that. And the amount of people that plump down so much money to improve their bike without working on their engine, I see it every day. And I'm just like, hey, work on the engine, like posture. If your posture was better, you would be putting out more watts, type of things. Yeah, and still occasionally, and I'm the guy with that bike now, right? Like, it's not that expensive, but I'm the guy walking in with the disc wheel and the whole thing now, and I'm just like, yeah, wow.
Hey, Sara, so that's the question is, I feel like there's a bell curve that goes on, right, Sara? So this is what I'm kind of curious about from your experience. Yeah. It's like, if you plainly look like you're new, right, most people just leave you alone. Right. If you walk in and like you have a road bike and you can clearly tell the newbies, right? And you're like, okay. And then on the other end, you can clearly tell by this person that isn't physically ready to do this, but they bought their way in. They bought the expensive bike. They got all the gear, and they for lack of a better term, they look like posers, right? And so you have that end of the spectrum. They're like, okay, so you just spent most of your time trying to figure out how to buy your way into performance. And you got the people on the other end. It's like, hey, you're just starting out, and that's cool. It feels like the closer you get to like what you're supposed to look like, you know what I mean? Does it, or am I wrong on that? Is it sort of like there's an expectation level if I come in and I look if I look a certain way, that I should be, also fitting in and having a certain performance level? Is that kind of an imposter syndrome thing?
I think, one of the things that maybe people miss or overlook is that, as you're saying, there are a lot of beginners at many of these races, especially like the local ones, but we tend to just automatically gravitate towards paying attention to the people that feel more elite, again, because it feels kind of threatening to us. And so the cool thing is we can choose, if we're in that setting, to intentionally pay attention to the other people around us that maybe are like also beginners or less elite. And you can also intentionally choose to go up and talk with them and try and build like more of that community feel with them as well. If you're feeling like you don't belong, don't fit in, you can go seek out the other people at the race that you see also look like they're more kind of at your level, experience level, or also beginners. So I'm not sure if that answered your question or not, but yeah, I think you could choose where you're focusing your attention, and there's a lot of power in that, 'cause
Sure.
it can be really distracting to focus on the people that you feel like you don't belong with, but it can be empowering and kind of comforting to focus on the people that you see that you do feel like you belong with.
So what are some tips and tricks for people to choose that, to go through there? Are there things that they can do to prepare themselves to then be able to make that choice instead of just shutting down completely?
Yeah, I think there are kind of three main things that I would suggest. The first is kind of what we talked about on the last podcast that we did last spring, but before you even get to the race, really thinking about why you're doing it in the first place. And you can use that to kind of help answer that question for yourself. Do I even need all of that fancy gear, right, to align with my purpose for competing, or do I not need it? That's something that's helped me and that I tend to go back to, is reminding myself, like, I'm not trying to qualify for Kona. I don't think I'll ever probably
Mm.
even do a full Ironman. Like, I did 170.3 and I think I'm good to just do like short stuff from now on, had my fill. And so I really don't need all that. I bring kind of your why, your purpose. And then in the moment when you're at the race, using self-talk and like attentional control kind of cues for yourself if you notice your mind is wandering. So one of the cues that I like, got from Brene Brown's book, Atlas of the Heart, but
Check that out.
basically, yeah, it's a good one. She has a whole section where she talks about comparison. And in the section, she talks about how she likes to lap swim, and she would always compare herself to the triathlete swimming next to her. And so having that reminder, just cueing yourself in your head, like stay in your own lane, picturing a swim lane quickly, if that imagery is helpful. If you notice your mind is wandering to what everybody around you is doing. So having some sort of cue like that, just a word or a phrase that you can tell yourself to shift your concentration back from externally, what is everybody doing around you, to internally, what's your purpose? What's your race plan? What are you actually doing right now to prepare, like the morning of or the day before? And then using your self-talk to help kind of boost your confidence as well. That could be
Mhm.
something like, I've trained well for this, I'm prepared, or, the equipment that I have works for me, and that's what matters, those kinds of things.
Yeah. Yeah. So trying to set yourself up to, you're competing against yourself, really is what you want to do, is give the best performance of yourself that day. And having that self-talk is crucial. I think it's crucial to have.
Yeah, I think the pleasant surprise too is if you go online and you look, you see all these, chiseled people doing triathlons, right? And they're always, great posture, their running form's perfect, all that sort of stuff. And before you get there, you think everyone looks like Jan Frodeno, right? Just this like 6'2", 150 pounds, 160 pounds, and you get there and you look around, you're like, oh my God, these are people like me.
Mm-hmm.
And you stand in the swim line and you're waiting to get in and you find out they're just as nervous as I am. And they don't know if they did their training good enough. And you find out like 80% of the population there. And to your point, Sarah, if you ask somebody, they may look like, because they're so focused on getting their race ready. You start talking, this community is beautiful. I mean, they'll help you out. I was watching, I had a friend of mine that did Ironman in Chattanooga, and one of the guys waited 4 or 5 minutes with the other guy because he blew a tire, and like, look, I'll wait for you. We'll try to figure out how to fix this. And then the SAG came along, he took off, but he ate 4 or 5 minutes because that's what it is. So I think when you go in, your perception is a bunch of, 8% body fat, and I'm just here. And you find out it's a community of really cool people. But because the perception, I think going back to that article, the perception of the barrier to entry is so high. It's several $100s to buy into this thing. And then this notion that you need, super expensive stuff in order to compete. Like to your point, I don't want to do an Ironman. I did a 70.3. It was fun. I just want to have a good time.
Yeah.
And so I think there's that reality that sometimes is good. When you get there, you find out, oh, wow, these are all nervous human beings that are just same boat that you are, that are struggling with the same injuries they had earlier and trying to figure out if they're going to be okay too. And I think that conversation, when you get there, you find out, oh, okay, people are actually human. They're not They're not machines looking at, watts and heart rate and, chest straps of, to figure out how well they're doing and all that. It's actually a fun community.
And they're
Yeah.
just as
The
nervous about
problem
the
is
sprint
we have a
as the
perception.
swim.
Yeah, but there's a perception problem that you
Yeah.
have to do
Yeah.
that, right? Because the people that are talking are the people that are 140 pounds and are writing the stuff. And we put people on stage that are, here's our hero dude that you're never going to attain to.
Yeah.
Right. I want to
Mhm.
show, I think, Tom, one of our biggest episodes was around, following one of our triathletes that got pulled from mile 99.
Yeah.
And she decided to go in the next year and do it. And that was one of the most watched things we had because I can identify with this human that's struggling, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Not this, oh my gosh, I can only do a 6:43, run right now. It's like,
Mhm.
So from a marketing
identify with you.
standpoint, we're trying to get people into the sport and to stay in the sport. Like I'm in the business of it, right? So I'm a coach. This is how I make my living and bike fitting. And so I want people to come in the sport because the sport's amazing. I think when you do it, it's fantastic. You're accomplishing amazing things. You're doing all of this, and it's really not as difficult as it sounds in your head when you're like watching it but from a marketing aspect, seeing somebody on a road bike or a mountain bike, upright with straight bars doing a sprint triathlon is not selling it to the general public, right? They want to see the Fredanos. They want to see them in the stretched out positions on $12,000 bikes and all. Like, this is triathlon. This is what we're selling. This sexy image. This is coming at you. And in reality, that's really not the case. That's that perception of, this is what you need to do the sport. Well, yes, on the elite level, you need to kind of look like this. You need to have that kind of money. You need to have that thing. But that's the 1% of the 1% of the 1% of the 1%, right?
Mm-hmm.
The rest of us are just trying to get by, and we're spending more money than we'll ever make, let alone ever make in the sport. And we're just trying to have some fun, and we're getting a whole lot of people because of that marketing that are coming in that want to do the big hard race, that one-off Ironman, so that they could say they did it. They're going to spend all the money, and then they're going to turn around and sell everything and walk away from the sport. So they're not sticking around because their why is different, and they're not enjoying the journey. They're not getting out of it what you can get out of the sport. Like, you can do sprint, you can do any distance, and the journey to what you become when you get to race day is amazing. And I think most people are missing that. I think they're just so focused on the event. They have this huge drop-off of depression after an event because they've put everything on this one day. And even if it doesn't go right, it's even worse. But they miss out. They're like, I did it. I got my medal. And then back to normal, right?
Now
And they're
what?
not focusing on it as a journey. So I don't know how we sell it as a journey that makes it sexy and everybody wants to be a part of it. I think that's my biggest complaint.
Yeah. I think that's such a great point, the marketing perspective, because often when you do go to a race website and register, the people that are pictured are often the kind of super fit, look very fast. Those are the pictures that are often on there. And if they diversify their marketing a little bit to show more of a variety of different people, when you think about even like ages, for example, like showing more like older adults would be interesting, or younger, because they said that average age range tends to be like, isn't 35 to like 45, 55, something in there. White males often. So just like kind of diversify Kenny. Just like diversifying like who's pictured, so that more people can see themselves in the marketing.
Yeah. And I know USAT is doing that. USAT, when they're promoting triathlon, is you don't see the standard middle-aged white guy out there, right? They're showing you all different body types. They're showing you all different, skin colors and all of that. I mean, the sport definitely skews to the white middle-aged male, because when they get into their 30s, they start to get out of shape, and they realize that they start to have a little bit of extra time and a little bit of extra money, and they need to challenge themselves. So they start doing this because their fitness went away from when they were in college, and now it's all of a sudden the body's catching up to them. So they start to challenge themselves and start to do these things and then go through. Especially the 40 to 44 age group was always the biggest age group. I think now it's actually skewed a little bit younger. But when I came up through it, when I hit 40 to 44 age group was just, that's where everybody was. That was like, almost 50% of every race was just us dudes that were desperately trying to hold on to our youth.
Yeah.
And we had a little bit of money and a little bit of spare time.
Yeah,
so
I think that's important.
It's hard.
It's a socioeconomic thing, right?
Yeah.
It's if I can control my time and I can control my money, right? And as you get older, that's what you get freedom to control your time and your money, right? The entry fee is annoying, not over the top, right? Well, God, that's annoying. That feels expensive, right? And you can afford a trainer or you can afford those things. And you also can afford your calendar. Like, hey, guys, I'm going to take a couple of hours. So when you're more in those positions of those roles, you have more flexibility of your time. But the problem is, to your guys' point, it's only geared, that is geared towards 70.3s and Ironmans. Yeah, I'm going to take 20 hours during the peak of my week to train. Which means that if I'm trying to do a job that I have to work 12 hours a day, that's going to be difficult, right? Whereas because of that that drive or that misconception that if you don't do Ironman, you really haven't done a triathlon, right? Sprints are fun. Sprints they take the same as a 5 or 10K, runner, right? Those, you don't need an expensive bike. You can grab it, you can grab your friend's road bike. It's 17 miles. It's not going to be, it's a 5K run. It's a fast swim. I remember I was embarrassed with myself. I showed up to a sprint triathlon and there's this kid there and all he's wearing is a pair of Speedos and it's 67 degrees. And I'm looking, I'm like, kid, what, you didn't want to wear a wetsuit? Because I thought, he was lean. He looked like a swimmer. He was like a high school swimmer. And I'm like, this guy's showing off. My gosh, he's going to go into 67 Lake and, he's too fast. He's going to have to, and he's like, no, I can't afford a wetsuit. And I'm like, oh, geez. And I was judging him on like, oh, well, he thinks he's really fast. And look at this guy. He's in and out of the water. He doesn't need to be worried about being cold. And here I am, I won't say it. I'm in a wetsuit. That's not cheap. And, and you find out like he just couldn't afford it. And it's like, well, bless him.
Yeah.
He's there anyway, right? And I think if we move, and Tom and I have been doing this for 4 years, we're trying to move people to say sprints and Olympic distance are triathlons. They're fun. It's not the entry fees aren't that expensive. The equipment you need doesn't need to be so tuned in because you're going to spend 12 to 14 hours, making this race.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the hard part. We got to move it away from that socioeconomic thing where socioeconomics isn't an issue and celebrate those stuff like those sprints and make it fun. Because if you show up to these things and you feel intimidated, I keep going back to golf, Sarah. This is what I keep going back to.
It's a good analogy.
The analogy is just, it's the same thing. Even if you can afford to get in and you borrowed somebody's clubs, there's still sort of this etiquette, right? Of how you do it and, what you tip the guy to do and what kind of, there's these unwritten rules.
Yeah.
It's the same thing in triathlon. There's some level of unwritten rules. People will look at your sock length and go, all right, noob.
You wear socks?
You got to wear the bucket hat, you got to be super cool when when you go in to set up your equipment and, that kind of thing. And there's some unwritten rules because it's so complex on how you do your setup and what you use. Do you come in with a Home Depot bucket? Oh my gosh, look at this guy. Or stuff like that. Or, somebody brought a stool once. I thought it was fantastic. And because they were physically needed a stool because sitting down was difficult. But all those unwritten rules, when the bigger the races are, the funnier it gets. And I keep looking at that golf analogy because we have a golf problem, right? It feels like there's a status thing. How do we get it back to just a sprint, fun, family, cool, chill kind of thing? I think it's a big question.
Yeah. That's that Ironman, problem. Triathlon started as a sprint. It started shorter in San Diego a few years before the Ironman even came about. So triathlon was happening. And if people probably don't notice, but the professional Olympic distance is a worldwide series that they race around and they do Olympic distance. That's the distance that they do. And there is super sprint and there is some shorter. There's there's multiple leagues out there. There's a whole world of triathlon. But because like a wide world of sports made that, sold us on the difficulty of an Ironman, and then Ironman became a brand over the years, turned into a corporation, and then they branded everything. So now you're just doing an Ironman, and everyone that's on the outside looking in just doesn't know the difference between Ironman and a triathlon. They think that's just one and the same. They don't understand all the nuances of the different lengths and distances. So we get back to that, well, it's an Ironman or it's nothing. And now I have to do it because I need to have the tattoo.
Yeah.
And you just go like, well,
Easy.
tattoos are, it's like, it's okay.
Those
But,
people.
you can, it's good to get the tattoo. It's
Okay,
fine.
good. Just saying.
I'm not saying about, I'm not
This is
dissing
awkward.
you.
Very awkward.
I'm not dissing you. I don't
like
have
tattoos.
the tattoo.
I'm just, there you
I
go.
like tattoos. I don't have an Ironman
Yeah.
tattoo. I don't have any tattoos currently, but I don't have an Ironman tattoo just because, I think I came at it from a different perspective. I didn't come at it to do an Ironman to check it out. And one of the things that I try to encourage people getting into the sport is don't buy a triathlon specific bike right away. You should go and race for 3 or 4 years, and you can go all the way up to 70.3 distance without buying a triathlon bike. In fact, you can do an Ironman without a triathlon bike, depending on the race. But you should, it's such a different animal to go from a road bike to a tri bike. They are so different. And when you're starting new, you don't have the bike handling skills. You don't. You haven't spent enough time on the bike. And triathletes have a bad reputation for bike handling because they spend so much time on a
They
trainer,
suck. Yeah.
or they don't spend enough time outdoors on a tri-bike, or any slight
'Cause they
movement
suck.
that you make. Yeah, well, they don't spend time on that. Fundamentals is
Yeah.
not always our thing. So,
You take such a thing where it's individual, right? You've been
Yeah.
training alone for months and months and months, and you put in a
Yeah.
group of 500-600 people, and suddenly you got to figure out you
we're
got to worry about
swerving
the
all
people
over the
next to you.
place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not about you anymore.
Yeah.
It's about
Yeah.
how you can handle it.
Yeah.
So,
And
So-
I
Sarah,
wonder
why did?
Yeah.
I was just going to say you brought this up. Is this Are we addressing the question that you wanted to address, or is it?
Yeah. Yeah,
Just
absolutely.
don't it. I think it takes, to your point, it takes the marketing effort. It's not just marketing, but it takes the articles to be able to celebrate, and put those people that are okay. It's almost like we got to figure out that normal people can be celebrated too, and put those.
Yeah.
Plug out to Joe Fleener, by the way, on Magic
Yeah.
Sports, right? I think he's one of the best.
Mhm.
A matter of fact, nationally, he got recognized nationally for several of his
Mhm.
races because he's bringing back the most brilliant thing he did, and I will praise him to the day, is that he made sure to put, what is it a wristband or a
It's
cap?
a wristband. You wear a rubber band that's for the newbies,
Yeah.
and they have a tent. Joe and Faye created this race concierge
Mhm.
for first timers, and you can ask all the questions. They have a setup of
Yep.
how your transition area
Mhm.
should look, how you do all of that stuff. You get the wristband. At the end of the race, you come back and they have a little gift for you. They have something else,
Perfect.
and then
It's
and
like
then
I'm a
they
student
also-
driver, right?
Yeah, you can
Just-
choose.
Yeah.
Just give me a
You
break.
can
I'm
choose
new.
a different
Yeah.
color cap, like a white cap,
Mhm.
if you feel uncomfortable in the swim. And then that allows the safety people to recognize that these people are a little less comfortable in the water and they might need some help. So they're not focused
Brilliant.
on the top swimmers, right? So they ease that barrier for people on that sense.
Yeah.
Well, you
In
created a
there-
social thing too, right? Because you see somebody with that wristband, you can go, oh, you're new too, right? So
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Magic Sports races, how they have a designated last place finisher as
Yes.
well.
Yes.
I volunteered to be that for the women's triathlon a couple years ago, and it was so fun.
Awesome.
Because you get to just chat with the racers that you're kind of alongside, and it's really cool to see the race from a different perspective when you're not trying to go for a certain time or anything, that you're just there purely to enjoy and support the other racers. And I think that's a cool program too, because then if you are a beginner, you know that you're not going to be last. There's always
Yes.
going to be somebody behind you. So
Yeah, that's a big
Yeah, and I
fear,
think-
right? People don't want to
Mhm.
be
Yeah.
I don't want to be last. I'm not going to do it because I don't want to be last. Well, you
Yeah.
won't be last.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Well,
they've
it's
got that
so
covered.
I think Joe needs to go nationally and
Yeah.
start figuring out how to get other race
Well,
coordinators to do this stuff.
So
man.
we were just
You
at
know?
the
Yeah.
Endurance Exchange, and they did. It's for race directors and coaches and athletes. So that's where we get our education from. That USAT puts on, and they did a session on talking about that. I think they've been promoting it out there. They got Triathlete Magazine voted 3 of the 4 Southeastern races were Magic Sports races. 3 out of the 4, which I'll give them a little grief for that. Going, couldn't get 4 out of 4. Okay, whatever. Sure, Joe. Just 3. Okay.
Who else is doing it? Come on.
Yeah.
So
But
come on, Joe.
they do a fantastic job. I mean, Faye's
Yeah.
been in this business for years. You know, Joe's been in this business for years, and they've really taken it to another level on that type
Mhm.
of
Well, it
thing.
makes it familial, right? And it gets
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
back to that familial sort of tribal thing. I mean, it was so funny because I remember I was road racing, and it was just I'm not only going to beat you, but I want you to regret that you ever got on a bike to begin with. Like that's how hard I got to beat
That
you.
was
Like
the atmosphere.
that was the atmosphere in road racing. You crush people. You embarrass people.
take their
Like you want to make
souls.
sure that you know that you are the
Gosh.
king. And I showed up to a cyclocross race, which is more kind of, there's dogs running around, people, their family. And I saw a guy that was a road guy, and I saw his friend with him. I'm like, oh man, are you going to kill him today? He's like, no, dude, we're just having a good time, man. If he wins, great. And I'm like,
Easy.
okay. And it's just, and I think triathlon has a little bit of that problem too, where, there's a certain sect of it. It's like, I need to beat you, and I need to beat you
Mhm.
soundly.
Yeah.
Whereas it's that familial thing that Joe's bringing back, that it is, hey, we're all new in this thing. We're all trying to experiment in this whole thing. Some of us this is the first time. Let's, designate even the people that are more experienced, to let them know that those are new people, and that give them a little bit of a break, right? Yeah, I'm a student driver, right? That's your student driver thing. I'm new at this thing. So, I steer wide if I was me, just like, hey, give them a little more girth.
I wish I
that's
could
okay,
see it
right?
quicker,
It's like,
right?
Yeah.
yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
Hold it up like that.
Put a little.
So
Can
when
we
I
put a
pass
bumper
you,
sticker on the back?
yeah, exactly. When I pass you, you don't, do this. But it's fun, and it's fun to be able to
Mhm.
celebrate those people that, and Tom and I have been trying to do this forever on this podcast. It's celebrating that person that just gets across the line.
Yeah.
Right. It's
Yeah.
not fast. It's the fact that you went out of your comfort zone. You wanted to do something. You challenged yourself, and you did it. Like, congratulations, man. You conquered a fear. What's get you back? I mean, how we get that community back? I don't know how. Is it too late? That's the question.
I don't think it's gone away.
Or does
to
it
be
have to
honest
break
with
down
you.
on the national level, and it still has to grassroots its way back
Yeah.
up again?
I think it's doing well. We just saw the numbers. Like triathlon is going up. Like it has 10-year swings. The numbers it peaked in 2010, and then it dropped off. So that the highest it's been was in 2010, and it's dropped off a little bit. It was on its way back up going to 2020, and of course, then it just kind of stagnated because of the pandemic. So we had a little drop off, but we're starting to see it come back up again, and that's based off of USAT membership numbers and one-day memberships and things that are coming on there. I don't have the numbers with me, but
You know what's weird
it's going on an upswing. I'm seeing more new triathletes coming in for bike fits.
Mhm.
hopefully
I'm seeing
younger
people
ones,
come
right?
in, and
So
yeah, they're all younger than me at this point. Everybody's
that's
younger.
everybody. Yeah, everybody's
It's like
younger.
I've never felt more old in my life,
Yeah.
but they're coming in. But what I want to be able to do, and Sarah, what's a good viewpoint for getting them to stick around for the journey, as opposed to just checking the box of doing a triathlon, whether it's a sprint or an Ironman or anything in between. What is it that would be seen or felt that would draw you to want to stay
Mm-hmm.
and keep doing it?
I think, beyond what we talked about earlier, figuring out why you're doing it, kind of what your individual goals are, I think also practicing just tolerating the discomfort of being new at something, which I think adults are generally not super
Not
great
good
at.
it. Yeah.
We tend to, as adults, right, we get into our career, we specialize in something, we get better at the thing we're already good at, and we're not quite as good at being a beginner and being able to tolerate the discomfort, the potential embarrassment, the mistakes that can come with that. And so I think that's part of it too. So you don't Like try the sport, feel uncomfortable or feel embarrassed, and then just exit because it feels easier to avoid it. So you don't have to deal with those feelings than to keep plugging away at it. So I think also going into it with a perspective that like this is just the process of trying something new, doing something that you're not super comfortable with is good for you as an adult in particular. No matter how it turns out, if you feel like you hit your goals or not, you still got out of your comfort zone and did something different, and that's still valuable for you.
Yeah. So how do you set goals that are like, I think it's the goal setting part that people are getting into it need to focus on. The goal isn't, you want to finish the race. I always say that's a goal. You want to finish the race. But even if you don't finish the race, the fact that we overlook the fact that you went through a lot to get to the start of the race, to get through it. Maybe it wasn't your day. Maybe you had a mechanical, or maybe you just didn't feel good, or maybe the training wasn't where it needed to be, whatever. So you didn't succeed. There was a failure, but that's all of these pieces are what makes us stronger. That's how we grow as human beings, right? We get challenged, and if we fail it, and I use the term fail, but I hate that. Like if we don't succeed at that particular goal, doesn't mean that's our identity. That's the thing. Like most people, what was the thing? I'm going to blank on his name. The shooter from Golden State Warriors, huh?
Steph
Who?
Curry.
Yeah, Steph. Steph is like one of the greatest shooters of all time, right? He set the record for 3-point shots, and just shooting has changed the game completely. And yet, if you look at the stats, he still misses more shots than he actually makes.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you start thinking about things like that, where it's just like he doesn't succeed every single time. It doesn't work perfect every single time, but you get better by actually failing more. There's people who started businesses who have failed on the first 5 businesses that didn't succeed and go through, and then they nailed it, right? Because you learn something, you get a little bit stronger, you just challenge yourself in ways that people are so uncomfortable with. We don't like change.
Yeah.
We try to stay with the status quo. I think triathlon is great sport for challenging that, because there's always a little bit of growth. There's always some growth on every level, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And I think like often we're naturally driven to set outcome focused goals, like for example, finish the race, get a certain place. And so sprinkling in more process focused goals can be helpful. Those are the specific action steps you're going to take. So that could be, I'm going to get 8 hours of sleep a night, for example, or I'm going to, do this specific workout. The things that you actually have complete control over that you can execute, because that way you have more ways of feeling successful. It's not all hinging on an outcome goal that you don't have complete control over. You could get a flat, the swim could be canceled because of the weather. You could, if you have a goal of, getting a certain place and a bunch of really fast people show up, you could still have a really good race, but still not place the way that you wanted to. And so having some of those process focused goals that are completely within your control can help you still get that feeling of success. And then also having some values aligned goals as well. Like, for example, maybe you set a goal like, I just want to be brave. You can be brave and have a terrible race, but still align with that goal because you still put yourself out there. You tried something new, you did something that was scary. And so having some process focused goals and or some of those more kind of broad values alignment type of goals can be helpful.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's kind of, and it's a difficult world we live in because everyone asks you about outcome-based goals. Everybody. Like my wife and I just, we decided to do a high rocks. Never done one before. And a high rocks is, a combination of you run a lot and you lift a lot, right? Never done it. And the general feeling is if you do well, it's under 90 minutes if you can get this done, right? And everyone was asking, so what's your goal time? Like, is your goal time 90 minutes? And you have to remind people because everyone asking you an outcome-based question. No, man, we're just there I'm here not to get a divorce. That's what I'm here for. Like my wife, this is the first time my wife and I are ever going to compete with each other where we rely on each other because we've done marathons together, but we haven't done them together. I run, she runs, and whatever the outcome. This is the first time where she had to do something that I was dependent on. And I'm like, that's my goal. My goal is to, have a household that isn't, divided. That's it. But you have to remind people so often about, no, it's not about a number. Like, it's not about a number. It's just, we've never done this before. We've never done it together before. We just want to see if we're going to have a good time. And for some reason, that's not a satisfactory answer for some people.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You're like,
Yeah, it's not.
okay.
Yeah.
Like, no, I just,
Mhm.
like, oh, so what's your time? Even, I was getting coached and he's like, so we're going to try to get you 90 minutes. I'm like, nope. What we're trying to do is just do this thing that I've never done before and have a good time doing it. And whatever the number is going to be, the number is going to be. Of course, I want to be faster and we already signed up for the next one to be faster. But, trying to remind your peers or people, just casual people, because they don't know how to interact especially if you're a non-athlete and you're trying to, well, so what time you want to get? Because that's an obvious, sort of like, what job do you do, right? Americans tend to
Yeah.
be very
Yeah.
job focused,
Yeah.
right? Well, what's
Yeah.
your career? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just chilling, right? What does it matter?
Yeah.
Right? I'm generally happy in my life, right? There's another thing, Sarah, that I wanted to bring up too. It's not about the individual. I find that because we've had people on this podcast that were first time triathletes and they would go to the women's only, like, and I thought it was great.
Mhm.
Again, plug to magic is that they did a women's only triathlon to remove that sort of jocular macho kind of thing. Just let them be kind of in a safer environment. But if people meet
Yeah.
other people there, then they see them at the triathlon. When you join a tri club, when you're
Mhm.
running with somebody of like mind with you or like speed, that tends to be a thing that I think if we have tri communities that are a little less focused on getting you on a time and getting you on a podium and more about just the community of triathlon. I
Mhm.
remember in California we started Fleet Feet started, and we had people that when they got to the half marathon, they already knew what place they were going to be in. Oh, I'm in third place. I'm going to be in third because I already know these two people showed up, and I'll be off by a minute or 2 minutes. I mean, they knew by a minute how fast they were going to be that day. And then you had another people that would like walk half of it, and they had the best time because they
Mhm.
were having fun with each other and they were getting it done. And the
Yeah.
medal looked exactly the same. By the way, the medal looks exactly the same. You know. And they had such a great time in that level of community, and they would show up to these things and they would show up in the rain or show up because of that level of community. That's the thing also I think we need to figure out how to do a better job of is have that where it's not a competitive sort of community. It's more of an inclusive where let's just go do this and have fun and do this together and be able to get across the line and raise our hand together. That to me is, I
Yeah.
think, if we can continue to emphasize that, I think it wouldn't be a bad thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel very fortunate that I have met people along the way who have been, I feel like super approachable, but like a bit of a step ahead experience wise, if that makes sense. So when I was living in Nashville, can't remember how I even got connected with her, but somehow got connected to someone who I ended up doing decent amount of like bike training with, and she had already done a 70.3, and I had never even thought about really doing one before until I met her, and I was like, she is a road bike too, like very average equipment.
Mhm.
We're about the same speed when we ride together. That makes it feel possible for me to do one as well. And she's ultimately what inspired me to do another one, and she and I both did the Chattanooga 70.3 the same year. So then we got to
Nice.
like meet up the day before, meet up the morning
Yeah.
of. Our bikes were racked like very close together, and without her I probably wouldn't have even like thought to try it, or I would have been even more intimidated. And so I think being able to again like find people that look like they have kind of a similar level experience
Mhm.
or kind of equipment as you do, but maybe a little bit more kind of a step ahead that can kind of pull you along can be helpful.
I think that nails it because people are drawn to, when they see somebody doing something, they're drawn to people that look like them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've talked about that with minorities and other groups
Yeah.
that, like, if they see someone doing it that looks like them, then they believe that they can do it. If they're looking at somebody that doesn't look like them, then it doesn't connect. It's just,
Yeah,
there's something mentally that
definitely.
just, and I totally understand that. I totally
Mm-hmm.
understand that. And I think that all comes down to marketing, right?
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
word of getting it out there. I know the tri clubs do a good job of getting out there on some social media and stuff, but if you don't know what you're looking for, it's almost like the tri clubs themselves need to do more
I would agree.
marketing. They need
Mm-hmm.
to do more marketing to let people know that they're actually there.
Yeah.
And then when you meet them, I think I mentioned it to you, Sarah, in our early conversations, like that elitism thing of what you see. But as soon as you enter in, it actually opens up. Like you get into it, then you
Mm-hmm.
start to see the different body types. You start to see the different equipment. You start to see
Yeah.
people that are just in shorts, running shorts,
Mm-hmm.
and that. But it's getting them in that door. and not scaring them away right at that point. And I wonder if it's more marketing. I'm thinking on the fly as we're here, is just like what the tri clubs could do on a marketing standpoint to get more members in that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, as far as when you get a new member, also being able to keep them too, whether it's a tri club or a race, I think kind of touching on what we talked about earlier, just, and this is something that we have control over ourselves, is like how we're talking about triathlon or in our experiences. And for example, I think they mentioned this in the article as well, but trying to avoid saying, oh, I'm just doing a sprint, which I'm super guilty of, and I'm trying to correct myself.
We've all done it. Yeah.
Yeah, because you're minimizing that, right? And then if there's somebody who wants to do a sprint, and a sprint is a big challenge for them, what is that communicating to them, right? That it's not as valuable of a goal as doing a full Ironman. So trying to take the kind of the value judgments out of the different distances that you're doing or the different races that you're doing, in just in the way that you're talking about them with your friends, with other people in the sport, or even people who are outside of the sport.
Yep. And we had Ado Doherty on the podcast, who's trying to make the U.S. national team, right, for the 2028 Olympics, and asked him about like doing longer distance stuff, and he was like, "Heck no, I'm not doing that." Like he has no ambition to go anywhere past the Olympic distance on all of that. He is like never.
I think. Well, the other thing for the tri clubs is not just about marketing. I think it's, one of the things we tried to do when Lori and I were part of the run group, my wife and I were part of the run group in California, is we made sure if we had a new person to show up, they're going to come in and they're going to be sort of, it's their first time, and to be able to say, oh, hey, so is this your first run today? Yeah, this is my first run. Okay, great. Well, what kind of runner are you? Oh, I'm sort of a 10:30, I'm just getting back into it. Hey, Sally's the one that runs our 10:30 pace group, right? Have you met Sally? And you attach them to that person. It's really critical at the beginning that you attach them to somebody that feel kind of takes that nervousness down. Now you've met somebody. Now you're not, because I remember, and I won't say the name, but I remember my wife and I just moved here and we showed up to a run club and we walked in. And we were seasoned runners, and we walk in and it was a group of 80 people and nobody said anything to us at all. Yeah. And we are outgoing people. We're like, hi, how are you? And it was like, we didn't know who was going to be the pacer for that time. And then they did the big thing, like, all right, everybody, we're going to go do this run and here's what's going on. And, that kind of thing. And there's some inside jokes going, and you felt really like an outsider. Whereas if you, these tri clubs, if you can get them in and say, oh, hey, this person here is just also doing they're going to be doing an Olympic distance as well. This is, this is their pace. And like, to your point, Sarah, you found somebody that was a similar pace to you on a bike, and you're able to do that, or similar pace on the swim, and just make that connective tissue. That's a huge deal, especially that imprint when they first get there, to feel like, okay, I'm not in the corner and I'm not trying to figure out how to not only figure out how to this new sport, but how do I figure out how to fit into a new social circle, right? They're talking about things I don't know about.
Yeah.
Right? These are new words that I'm using, right? What's a brick? I have no idea what a brick is,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
for those,
it's
a bike
before.
run.
Yeah. Like I've tried various groups, and like I've had some where I join in, like, I tried this road biking group when I lived in Billings, Montana, that like a local bike shop ran. And I was like nervous to go the first time, but it was like mostly men. I think there was like one other woman, but by the end of it, I felt like so included and looked out for, and people were like teaching me things. And
Correct.
the other woman was like, here, have some of my water, because I ran out, and people were just like so welcoming. And then I've had other experiences where I go several times and I just never feel like I'm really like invited into the group, and you feel like it's kind of cliquey and people aren't really trying to welcome you. And those are the groups you don't really want to go back to.
Yeah, so triathlon needs to figure out, to me, it's not just a marketing thing, but it's also sort of like, how do you make it back to that familial thing? Where you feel like you're part of something that's kind of cool, because you're going to show up, and if you do a crappy race, people are going to be like, hey, that's okay. We'll get them on the next one. Yeah. And it's like, you're right. That wasn't my day. I've been to run clubs where they were really successful in doing that. Like you go do a race and you implode, and they're like, hey man, wasn't your day, but next time let's get back to the training. We'll do it next time. And you're like, it isn't a question of one and done. It's
I
how
think
do I
we've lost.
This is my social circle.
I think we've lost a little bit of that from the pandemic. Because
Yes,
I see a lot less of
agreed.
that. I think Kenny and you and I have conversations about bike rides and group rides. We don't have group rides out here. Or is not as many. I think the Harpeth Bike Club is trying to do some stuff along those lines, but people don't know how to ride in a group. They don't know how to ride together. The tri clubs get together, they take a picture, and everybody just takes off and does their thing. Which,
It's true.
when they're on tri bikes, it's okay because they shouldn't be riding that close together because
Yeah.
half of them get in their aero bars when they're right behind somebody,
Yeah.
and it's like, please don't do that. But we don't have a group that goes out where, okay, here's the rules. Here's the hand signals we're using. Here's how you're riding. You're riding right next to each
Exactly.
other or right behind somebody. You're not half-wheeling somebody, which is extremely dangerous. Most people probably don't even know what half-wheeling is. So it's like, how do you ride in a group where you're going to ride a little bit slower than you probably want to at certain times, or a little bit faster than you want to at certain times, but the whole group stays together and you have no drop and drop rides, right? That takes a little bit more organization. It takes a little bit more buy-in from the people that want the club to grow, right? They have to put a lot of time into that. The people, I know they have that in the Harpeth Bike Club now. They've been doing a lot more education, rider education type stuff. They have some dedicated people that put a lot of time and effort into the club that way. Some of them are more retired, so they have a little bit more time. When we get in the triathlon clubs, it's not that way. It's everyone's got a busy life. They're in their 40s, and they're kind of moving along. So how do we get the clubs to share some of that, to have that group rise and go along with that? Because some people are just not. I think we've lost how to educate and bring new people into the culture of it. I think that was a whole podcast we're going to do one of these days.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we'll make it a 2-parter because I'll probably go on for an hour just
You're
venting.
passionate about it.
I'm very passionate about. I love riding in a group. If you've ever really ridden in a group where you're shoulder to shoulder with somebody and you get 6, 8, 10 people and you're all riding as one, and it takes practice. It takes time to learn. It's okay to bump shoulders with people. You don't have to panic. You have to know where your bike is. You have to be able to ride straight and be able to turn your head, which most people can't. When they turn their head, they go that direction. They wobble all over the place. They have to be able to ride and trust the person next to you, and do certain things and be able to kind of have a conversation, but also be aware of your situation, your environment. Your situational awareness is what I always get on my soapbox about. So it would be nice to have something like that. I don't know if I have the time to develop it or do it within the tri groups, but there has to be some conversation about how we can start to educate people, that then we can teach the new people coming in, which will make you feel like you're going to want to stay. You're definitely going to want to stay. If you do a couple of group rides where people trust one another, you're going to show up every single time because you're going to feel safe. You're going to feel more secure. You're going to feel like you're actually getting something out of the workout, and you're going to have fun. You're just, you're going to be able to share stories and go get coffee and do a bunch of other things. I'd love to get back to that a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it could be cool too I don't know if, the clubs necessarily have the resources or capacity to necessarily do this, but if they do have some events, whether they're workouts or clinics that are really targeted, obviously, to brand new people. So that way you feel like if you go, you're not going to be intimidated, or everybody else is also new. So I should belong.
Yeah.
The skill level should be, roughly equal to other people. That can help you feel safe too, I think, when it's just there's some kind of intro events or workouts that are just very obviously targeted at brand new people.
Yep. I agree. What else did we miss? Did we get it all? Did we cover that?
I think
Did
so.
we beat that
The
topic
rant.
to death?
It was a long rant.
Sarah, I'm so happy that you reached out to me, and it was fun seeing you down at Chattanooga Full when I was down there with a couple of my athletes.
Yeah, that was fun.
It's always nice to be at these races and see a friendly face that's not in the event, right? You just kind of pop it in. It's just like, hey, cool.
Yeah.
Because to me, this is an extended family, right? That's all tied. That's all tied through the sport. The reason I've been in the sport and made it a lifestyle for me is that when I go to different races on some different levels, I'll be in another state or I'll be someplace else and be over there, and to bump into somebody that I actually know that's connected to the sport somehow,
Yeah.
even just remotely. A friend of a friend that we know and kind of connected that way always makes me happy,
Yeah.
and makes me feel like I'm doing the right thing because I've met so many cool people. So it was great to see you and meet your husband down there.
Yeah.
And then I had my
That was fun.
athlete's family, one of my athlete's family, surround me like with panic questions about, they were doing the math and he wasn't going to make the cutoffs and doing all this other stuff. I was like, he's fine.
Gosh.
He's going to be totally fine. They were all like, we figured it out. We did. You've never even seen the sport before. You absolutely are fine. He's like, and he did great. He crushed it. He did fantastic.
Good.
But I got whisked away and I was like, I had to take care of everybody. We had a good time down there. It was a good weekend, good conditions.
Good.
But,
Yeah. Yeah. It's
thank you
fun
for coming
sometimes
on
to
the
just
show.
go down and spectate. So yeah.
Yes. Oh, anyone should. I think people should pop down and just watch the races. If it's a local race for you,
It's inspiring.
instead of complaining about
Mhm.
the traffic and, not being able to get around town, just go watch these people. The energy that comes from the transition area is it's totally palpable by anybody that walks in there. It's like, if you don't feel energized walking down there, like, I don't know, something's wrong with you, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm getting crazy, but we appreciate you coming back on, Sarah. Always great to talk with you.
Thanks for having me.
Steadfast Living Therapy. We'll
Mhm.
put are you on Instagram? Are you on the socials?
I'm not.
you
I'm
just,
not
no,
really on
good for
social
you.
media. No.
Good for you. Good
I've
for
got
you.
a,
We'll
a
put your
practice
website and
website,
stuff
but
down
that's
there.
about it.
Okay. So would people find you if they need some help and they want to talk
Yeah.
to you? We'll have that down there, and I'm sure we'll have you on again because there's some other good articles that have come out to talk about
Yeah.
well, like to talk about the mental side of the sport. I think it's very, very important. So thank you again.
Absolutely.
Thanks
Yeah,
everybody
you're
for
welcome.
listening. Keep the comments coming. Like I said, we really appreciate everybody's feedback. Been doing this for a while now, so we're into year 6. Just finished
Crazy.
year 5, moving into year 6. Really enjoying this. I hope we're getting better at it. So little by little, we'll get there. So
Yeah.
keep it up. Keep it up. We're good.
We're an acquired
Kenny,
taste.
as always.
So,
Yes,
there you go.
on most days. Yeah. So we'll try to and we've got lots of new episodes coming up. So stay tuned, subscribe. Kenny, thank you again. Sarah,
Thanks,
thank you. And everybody, we'll catch you on the next one.